Welcome to Immigration Radio 24. And today I'm going to have a look at an article today by Suella Braverman in the Daily Mail. Now, I found this really interesting because she is repeating her stance when she was the Home Secretary, and she has had two seats as Home Secretary. And this is a really interesting article. So today she writes that her stance is not surprising as Home Secretary because at the time there was a spend of 8 million per day in hotels in the UK. Plus, the Home Office was expending 4 million of public money every year on asylum. Now, asylum is not a new phenomenon in the UK. We have always welcomed asylum seekers to the UK because we protect people who are at risk from harm. It is a filtering process where people are essentially triaged through an asylum claim to find out whether they are a refugee or not. So, refugee status is not a given. It's not as though it's a grant. It's actually a declaration. A person is or is not a refugee, just as a person is or is not a child, etc. So that's just my brief explanation. So when I was looking at the spending issue that she was talking about in this article, I decided to look at what is being left out. So the House of Commons Library has a report on the 10th of October 2020, sorry, on the 24th of October 2023, where they actually look at the spend and income for the UKVI. The UKVI in the UK, for those who do not come from the UK, is the Home Office. So the money spent, the money that came in on visa and international and nationality fees in 2022 is reported at being 2,200 million plus 1,700 million in surcharges and 600 million in employer levies. Employers who bring in staff from overseas have to pay levies, and most visa applications are accompanied by a healthcare surcharge, which I will explain it later on as I speak. So the revenue from visas and nationality helps to fund the Home Office and the NHS both. So migrants are not coming in and being given as a given when they apply for a visa to legalize their stay, extend their visa, regularize themselves, etc. They are actually paying money for this as a service and receiving a service from the Home Office. However, when we speak about asylum seekers, these are people who leave their life behind and in an escape situation because they believe their lives are at risk or they will be harmed for some reason in their home country. This is not to say that not everyone who claims is a refugee, but the triage system is in place to establish that. And that is what is costing the 4 million a year. Is it 4 million a year that she spoke about? The income from visas and nationality, I think, far would cover that 4 million a year that she's saying comes from the public purse. And while some of it may come from the public purse, I think there's a lack of sincerity in some of the things that are said when it comes to talking about immigration and nationality. Okay, so moving forward, in July 2023, the government announced that it would increase fees on or by the 4th of October. And these increases did take place on the 4th of October in various immigration category visa types. The increases ranged from 15% to 35%. Settlement, for instance, which is indefinite leave to remain, increased from 2,400 per application to 2,900 per application. So that was a huge jump in increases. Notwithstanding, upcoming upcoming is the increase in the immigration health surcharge, which is going to take place on the 16th of January 2024. That will be next week. And what we will see is a 66% increase from a charge of £624 per annum to £1,035 per annum. Now, these fees are taken in advance. So, if your visa is going to be issued for 2.5 years, you then add on to that cost of the application what it would cost you in immigration health charges for 2.5 years. I would say about 2,600 per application on top of the visa fee if you were applying, for instance, as a spouse. So in Suella, in her write-up, she has not mentioned anything about what the Home Office is bringing in visa fees and how it actually works. But that would help the public to understand better what they're looking at. Okay, in the majority of cases, as I've said, visa fees are accompanied by the healthcare surcharge, which is used to support the National Health Service usage. And there is also an employer levy, which employers pay when they bring skilled labour into the UK. These factors are all mentioned in the House of Commons research brief, but they're not mentioned by the former minister herself. Now, back to what she's saying in her article, she speaks about the housing impact of illegal entrants coming into the UK. In relation to this factor, it's mentioned that there are more than 100,000 illegal entrants in hotels, and this is putting pressure on to communities. I know that she said that, and I know that this is true to an extent. You see it when you go to visit the GP, but this ignores the fact that we've also had the Ukrainian crisis and a humanitarian import of Ukrainian citizens into the UK, where they've had to be housed, they've had to be added to medical registers, and they have had to be afforded good community reception, healthcare, housing, all of the things that she's speaking about also apply to the illegal entrants. The story of illegal entrants is not a new one. There have always been illegal entrants in the UK. They have always had the problem of finding these people and removing them. At least they know where these 100,000 illegal entrants are. And they can all act on it as quickly or as slowly as their system would allow. Therefore, I'm going to look at the issue of public opinion. So, knowing all of this and knowing that public opinion does not support this particular set of individuals, means that this type of argument is firing up, or article is firing up emotions. She then goes on to speak in rhetoric about her plan to stop the boats. My question in relation to that policy has always been, how can she do that when you can't change the direction of the ocean waves? Once the boat is on it, unless she has the powers of reflection, it will not work. Reflection happens when the water bounces off of sea cliffs, causing the direction of the waves to change. If that was happening miraculously in the UK, then the boats would be headed back in the opposite direction if they were on wind power and not engine power. Okay? It is not as though comprehensive schooling in the UK has no value. People are taught to think. The public are not idiots, drinking up the swill of that the politicians want to throw at them or feed them. We all know that the propaganda machine has always driven public opinion. Okay, we are reminded in this article of the sentiment of anti-immigration policies, which is historic. You will see in some books, trainers and authors such as Gina Clayton explores in her immigration course the history of a hostile immigration system. Mrs. Braverman continues her forage with a suggestion of her policy to block off domestic human rights claims. Whatever would that entail would be the questions. Just to educate the public, we are a nation signatory and participant of several international treaties, and if we haven't signed them, we're bound to them by customary international law. And these treaties include the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights of 1966, the International Covenant on Social and Economic Rights of 1966, the wonderful UN Declaration on Human Rights 1948, and the European Convention on Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms 1950. We also have our own little beauty, which is the 1998 Human Rights Act. We have the Convention on Statelessness and the Convention on the Status of Refugees. And this is just to name a few international treaties that we are bound to by the concept, the legal concept of international customary law. And now I'm becoming a law lecturer, which I am in some points of the month. So without knowledge, we do not know what a politician is speaking about when they move their lips or shake their pens. So we need to dig deep to find out exactly what is being said when it is a diplomatic mistake to do so. Since October 2000, we've had in play in the UK our own Human Rights Act. We have essentially an unwritten constitution. It changes in form and shape. And so every now and again, Parliament will change a law or bring in a new law. And this is one of the laws that came in 1998, which is the Human Rights Act 1998. So the question for Suella or Sue Ellen would be, how difficult, if not perverse, would it be to block domestic human rights claims? I move on to Rule 39, which is mentioned in the article and which is not explained there. What it is an interim measure that can be applied through petition to the European Court or individual petition to the European Court on Human Rights, and they can put in place measures similar to injunctions. What we've seen is moving forward, is the Illegal Immigration Act of 2023 in the UK is now in place. It's received royal assent on the 20th of July 2023, and it contains provisions which allows the government to disregard the interim measures issued by the European Court on human rights in spite of the risk of violation to life or the right to life, which in the human rights spectrum is a qualified right, or the freedom from torture, ill treatment, and degrading treatment, which is a non derogable right, which means that you can't derogate from it. It's an absolute right, an absolute human right, to be precise. So, moving forward, as the UK is a party to the ECHR Convention, it is bound by the rules of the European Court on Human Rights, which has itself ruled that a state's failure to give due regard to an interim measure, which essentially prevents the removal of an individual who has made petition, is a violation of the state's obligations under the treaty it has ratified. This is Immigration Radio 24, keeping it real. So we have to really look deeply into what is being said or written by the author and what they are trying to achieve by what they are putting out there, what they're saying to us, playing with people's lack of knowledge or ability to question issues that they have little knowledge about because it may not be their field of expertise, or they might not have been too interested in law, etc., etc. We have to be very, very careful as to where we are going with this. So, skipping along, the former Home Secretary speaks about the Rwanda standoff. Now, we're not getting into this because this is all about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, I would say, Suella Cassiana Braverman, I guess you will soon be labeled a dame of the British Empire. Keep speaking. We will watch this space. Thank you for listening to Immigration Radio